Gone was the form of Lillian, vanished without a trace, as all phantoms do when exposed to the merciless light of day. She moaned, pressing her hands against her head, perhaps hoping to bring her spectral Lillian back to life. Of course, it did no good. No matter how fervently she insisted, pressing her palms against her eyes with such force it started to hurt, she could not bring Lillian back. She had never been here at all. She really was a hopeless idiot. She sniffed, burying her face underneath her blankets and curling into a ball. Perhaps she curled up tightly enough she could even fold herself out of existence into a different plane of being. But this was all in vain. Even a piece of paper, if folded thousands of times, would still continue stubbornly to exist. Simply making something smaller did not erase it. It hurt. Everything hurt. Her arms and legs ached, her joints burning up in pain. It was impossible to imagine that she had once been so healthy she had been able to walk for more than 20 miles in a single day. Now she was unable even to get out of bed. But this physical pain was nothing compared to all-encompassing, consuming feeling of emptiness that had begun to blossom inside her body, eating her from the inside out, slowly until she felt so light she wondered whether there was any Samantha left within her at all. Samantha! Get up! Samantha could register a voice, though dimly, as though it were calling from the other side of a dense wood congested with trees. In some vague area of her brain, not quite overtaken with the effects of the opiate, she could register that the one speaking to her was Lillian. However, at that point she was too far ensconced in her sleepy stupor to care all that much. Samantha, get up! You have been lying in bed for almost a week. What business is this of yours? It is my business, Samantha, because I care about you. Those words, I care about you, breathed a certain kind of clarity upon Samantha, giving her a new lease of life, if only for a few moments. Samantha blinked, struggling to see through her afflicted eyes, her vision hazy, the whole room spinning. She was dimly aware of an unpleasant smell, the aroma of an unwashed human body and crumpled clothes, and wondered whether that was her. It certainly could not be Lillian, standing there so prim and proper, her blonde hair, brushed with precisely 100 strokes, falling around her shoulders, shining under the sunlight. And why was there sunlight anyway? Hadn't she closed that window? Samantha's eyes, searching blankly, finally focused regarded with the face of the unimpressed Lillian in all her pristine glory. The dress she was wearing, the light blue with the white flowers and the matching bonnet, was one of Samantha's favorites. It made her look slightly less austere than usual, almost like cloud drifting in the spring sky. Again that dream came to plague Samantha's mind. The soft sensation of lips, a gentle, caress, impassionate touch. I love you, Sam. I love you too, Lily. But none of that love could be found in Lillian's expression now, and the next words she spoke dashed the fleeting, fragile hopes of Samantha to pieces. I do not want to see you wasting your life away like this, all because of a handful of negative reviews. It is pathetic. It were only the negative reviews that had run her into this stupor, but that was not the case. Perhaps if Lillian had continued to support her, rather than snap at her, she could have coped with the rejection, humiliation, the outright mockery, but without Lillian she was nothing. She could know nothing. Samantha had understood the limitations of hers long ago, and though she had tried to explain to Lillian during her overwhelming bouts of anxiety, as best as could, it seemed Lillian still did not understand. Lillian was too practical to understand because Lillian did not rely on anyone. Even the French boy she had met some years ago, who she had raised a child with, had been unable to ensnare her heart. Whoa. I didn't expect that far it went. When the revolution became more violent, Lillian had returned home, where she had, over several years, learned to forget about this old flame of hers almost entirely. Lillian often accused Samantha of being fickle, but Lillian could not be just as fickle too. She simply did it in a manner that was considered more socially acceptable, with a cool, composed kind of detachment that Samantha could not understand, did not want to understand. And how had a woman like this, who carelessly trampled all those who stood in her way, ever managed to become so precious, so dear to Samantha? Samantha did not know. Maybe it was because Lillian, despite her own frequent bouts of depression, always seemed to know what to do. She did not allow herself to wallow in her misery, or sit and ponder what could have been. Instead, she got up every morning, at the same time, and brushed her hair. 100 strokes every day. And now, because she was unable to understand Samantha, just as Samantha was unable to understand her, she was going to chide her, scold her, blame Samantha for something she could not control. Because switching between extreme emotions, with very little provocation, was simply what Samantha was. It was what made her her, in the same manner that their sweet songs distinguished nightingales from common farmhouse chickens. If Lillian was going to behave like that, so cool and cold, hardly daring even to approach Samantha, as for she were a plague victim, dirtied and diseased and highly contagious, then Samantha was not going to try to explain herself. Not anymore. Not when everything hurt too much. Yeah, you are quite rightly. With laughter cold as the lake frozen over, Samantha turned, facing away from Lillian, cruelly, deliberately, just as Lillian continued to remain ignorant of her own suffering. I'm a pathetic person. You should have realized that much already. Not my fault that you did not get the message earlier. Samantha, you are being completely impossible. How do you want me to respond to that? I want to respond by leaving me alone. I do not much feel like having company right now. You are such a child. You cannot simply lie in bed and try to hide from the world when things do not pan out as you wanted. You need to keep going, to get back up onto your feet and try again. Nobody is going to comfort you every time you fall on more. The world is not like that, and you should not expect it to be like that. You are supposed to be an adult, a grown woman. You have said that so many times, but I still do not understand. For being a talented poet, you can be surprisingly nice when you want to be. What do you not understand? Come on, Samantha, why the silence? This is a simple question. You should not be having so much trouble with it. Simple for you? Maybe. But Samantha sniffed, wiping her eyes with the back of her arm. Even though her eyes were already red and raw, no doubt from continuous bouts of crying, she had been crying so much lately she could not distinguish when she was in tears and when she was not. She did not want to cry in front of Lillian again. Not after last time. I do not understand. How can one behave as an adult when there is no template to follow? When every person is different? Regardless how I behave, I am still an adult, just as much one as you are. I simply choose to live my life differently. You are choosing to drive yourself into an early grave. Good. Maybe I prefer it that way. And you will just throw away everything you care about simply so we call and lie in bed adult on all beds? That's more or less correct. You mean you could throw away your idealism or your creativity, your writing? You? For the first time Lillian faltered, her fingers trembling, eyes softening. You could throw away your friendship with me? At the mention of their friendship, Samantha's whole body stiffened, her fingers gripping her covers ever more tightly, making her veins stand out shockingly underneath her skin. From being inside so long, the curtains resolutely drawn, her skin had grown deathly pale, her dark eyes like two holes poked out of a white sheet. The veins crisscrossing her wrists, her neck, the underside of her hands were so clear it seemed almost as though they were trying to escape from her body, straining against her skin. It was true. Samantha did not want to drive Lillian away. Even now, when Lillian's callous nature was causing her pain, she still loved her. She loved her more than anything. Lillian could do anything to her, and Samantha would still forgive her. Lillian could gouge out Samantha's eyes with her fingernails, tear out handfuls of her hair, strike her across the face, break the delicate little bones in her fingers, and Samantha would accept it, all of it, without complaint. She would even bow her head and thank Lillian for the abuse, for Lillian was a smart and sensible woman, and if she was so fit to abuse Samantha in such manner, then surely she had got reason. Surely Samantha deserved it. She was, after all, an inferior person, hardly even human at this point. But Samantha's love was not sweet and gentle, a soothing ball. It was sharp and bitter, corrosive, a toxin that bit into her slowly piece by piece, until her own identity completely wore away. Samantha feared there was nothing of her that could be called herself left, nothing but her unwavering love and respect for Lillian. It hurt. If loving Lillian was going to be so fraught with anguish, she would rather not love Lillian at all. It was cowardly, she knew, and childish, yeah, trying to run away from everything that upset and unbalanced her life. But Samantha did not know what else to do. All she knew was if she remained by Lillian's side, it would destroy her. Even more so than it had done already. Although Samantha had suspected it before, now she was almost certain. Her jealousy of Lillian, which she tried to keep closed away inside her breast, was getting harder and harder to quell. This jealousy, coupled with her suspicion Lillian only indulged in their friendship because it made her feel better about herself, was going to destroy her. It hurt her to hate Lillian, and yet she suspected, if they remained together, that would happen. Just as Lillian disliked her, so too would Samantha. And a life in which she was not friends with Lillian was not a life Samantha wanted. It was not a life she could even begin to imagine, because simply thinking about it made her head hurt so much she feared her school might cave in around itself. Although all she wanted to do was confess to Lillian, to take this opportunity to cling to her, beg her to not to go, not to give up on her, this time because she would try to get better, and she would try to be happy, and she would try to be normal. She truly would. She could not. Not this time. No. There is no one thing I care about in this world. Not even my friendship with you. Samantha heard Lillian's sharp intake of breath and could detect in this sound, harsh as the wind rattling through the trees stripped of leaves, the betrayal that Lillian must be feeling. Samantha shivered. Despite her resolve, she was suddenly seized with the desire to throw herself at Lillian's feet, to implore that she have mercy, and at least forgive her, because she really was sick. She had been sick for a very long time, and sometimes, when she looked at the other people, she wondered whether she even belonged to the same species that they did, because she often felt so out of space. And it seemed nobody could understand how she really felt, and she had not the means of expressing herself because such a language had not yet been invented, maybe never had any cause of being invented, because other people were not as sick as she was, and sometimes she said things and she did not mean them, and she did not know why she said them, and words were not enough. Words were never enough, and it was at times like this that she ended up curled up in a ball crying, because she was only pretending to be a proper human being, but she had the strong suspicion she was not one, not really, because she had never met another human being quite as broken as she was, and for once she had allowed herself to believe she had met somebody who could save her, who could heal her, who could make her sane. But that was just a comfortable illusion, and she was not any better. She would maybe never get any better. But please, oh please, whatever you do not hate me for it, because you mean the whole world to me, and I would suffer any kind of indignity if only you don't go. But Samantha did not say any of that. Much like her attempts to create new poetry, often without success, she did not even know where to begin. There were too many words, but at the same time not enough, and her head was starting to hurt. Lillian, on the other hand, seemed to have no problem formulating her sentences. Then again, Lillian never did. She had written the vast bulk of their supposedly collaboration herself, after all, and her confidence in the words that she possessed never seemed to falter. Is that what you think of me, Samantha? Do I honestly mean nothing to you? No. Yeah. Even for over these last 2 years, I've tried, believe me, I've tried so hard to be here for you. To comfort you during ridiculous bouts of self-indulgence. To understand you. Even though your mind seems so strange and incomprehensible, I would sooner find and lose it. Thought speaking to a madman. No. Yeah. Well, if those are true feelings, although I very much doubt you could give a transfer if I asked the same question such as what color is the sky, for you seem to have no understanding of the world around you, then I do not know why I have spent so much time with you. I've done so much for you, and you have not even tried to get better. As far as I can tell, you have only grown worse, your condition even more twisted as time goes by. It makes me wonder why I believe we could ever be anything together, create anything together, when all you do is squander your time living in fantasyful land. Fantasy. Fantasy is kinder. It does not raise its voice or give me headaches, or make me cry. Not as much as you do, Lillian. If you want to exist in some lonely, deluded universe containing only one person, then be my guest, but I'm not going to let you drag me down. You have been a burden on me ever since I met you, and I have been far, far too nice. Curse niceness! With an insufferable person like you, niceness will not do anything. What you need is a sharp slap to bring you back to reality, but by this point, you are so far gone, I doubt you'll ever even be able to feel it. And with that, Lillian turned about on her heels, safe lartus and right as she always was, except for the part where she was not. Samantha might have been reasonably well gone, only half her mind able to focus with any real clarity on the events that had just played out, but that half of her mind was persistent and was noisy and was painful. Samantha could feel it. She could feel the loss of Lillian acutely, almost as though one of her arms or legs had been cut off. Dimly she wished she had sustained a crippling level of physical abuse, as opposed to that emotional onslaught which had cut through the strings of her heart one by one. Maybe then, she would have been able to die slowly, peacefully, as the blood drained her body, each and every negative thought exiting her bloodstream in a steady trail of thick black tar. Lillian. Yes, Samantha? Samantha dipped her head under Lillian's inquisitive stare, her fingers dropping from her lap to her sides. Why must we argue with one another so when we are supposed to be such good friends? Lillian paused, seeming to ponder the question seriously, something which Samantha appreciated. She had half expected her friend to rejoin with some glib comment, a roll of her eyes, and irate, why do you always dwell on such gloomy things? The fact she even deigned to take Samantha's square on good faith was something that brought color to Samantha's cheeks, making her heart pound a little faster in her chest. I suppose it is because we are good friends that we argue. Do you not think that is a touch paradoxical? I suppose. But it is inevitable, I think. Inevitable that, if one day you to become friends with me, they will one day want to trust me? Well, you said it, not I. I admit it is true. Roberta has said much the same in the past. What did you highly esteem friend Roberta said? She said... Samantha frowned, shifting slightly. For some reason she could not make herself comfortable. Was it because of Lillian's close proximity, which was making her heart race so? Was it because she had had so little sleep over the last few nights? She felt strangely like an animated corpse, being pulled out of the hazy, nebulous world of the dead into the more concrete, more colorful world of the living. Or was it because the vicious argument from more than 3 months ago, that caustic collection of comments Lillian had leveled at her, were still deeply embedded in her pale flesh, soft and sensitive, liable to turn pink at the slightest provocation? Perhaps. When Samantha moved, she felt those poisoned barbs of Lillian's left behind inside her heart, dig even deeper, making her flinch. Even now it hurt. What was the best way to remove poison from one's system? Were you meant to suck it out of the wound? But Samantha did not know from which point the poison had entered her system, and she did not know how to reach her heart with her desperately scrambling fingers without tearing open her own chest. Perhaps was impossible to reach the source of this discomfort, no matter what she said, what she did. It had penetrated much deep, and it was much too late. She had known how long she could not leave Lillian. She could no sooner pull out her own fingernails than sever their friendship Lillian. It was simply impossible. It would hurt too much. The pain she was experiencing now, simply being cast in Lillian's shadow as they sat together, was nothing like the agony she had been subjected to during those uncomfortably long 3 weeks when they had not spoken at all. During that period, Samantha had been sure she would die. In fact, had welcomed the idea with arms open wide. She would sooner have died than wake for yet another lonely, miserable morning all alone. Of course, it had been Samantha who gave in first. It was Samantha who had written Lillian a letter of apology, and it was Samantha who had timidly, abashedly asked if they could meet again, to reconcile, her head held low, the whole time, hardly daring to look at Lillian's face. Unlike Lillian, Samantha really was alone. She had the unfortunate ability of being able to ostracize herself from all the others easily, whereas Lillian had Theodore by her side. The two were thick as thieves, and had only grown closer during those 3 weeks, where Samantha and Lillian's friendship had been at severe risk of disintegrating completely. Even failing Theodore, Lillian was not short of acquaintances. Everybody she met on the road, when she and Samantha went for their walks, stopped to smile at her, to offer a few pieces of polite conversation and queries after health. When they addressed Samantha, it was always after they had greeted Lillian, a brief afterthought out of good manners rather than a genuine concern over her well-being. Everybody seemed to love Lillian, and Samantha did not blame them. Samantha loved Lillian rather too much herself. Roberta Starr was a strange person, she said upon her first meeting with me. She was utterly charmed, almost swept off her feet. Samantha shifted, drawing her knees and up underneath her chin, wrapping her arms around them. She said I had a way with words, a certain manner of speech, which almost forced one into compliance. And yet, she said, once she had grown to know me, this illusion quite wore away. She said it only a matter of weeks, a kiss being this object of wonder, this clever and sparkling and witty conversation. Fuck! Person I talk to, okay? Conversationalist. Okay. I managed to say that actually. And instead began to look like the most tiresome bore. Well, although I agree with the general sentiment of her statement, I have a few objections. I should copy you for the sake of my already wanted to go. Lina offered Samantha a small smile, for it was clipped, not at all like the smile she showed to Theodore. Lina never smiled at Samantha the same way she smiled at her brother, and Samantha knew that she never would either. Lina quite simply did not have enough love for her. I do not think you are boring, Samantha. It is impossible to find you boring. You might so often talk about the same things over and over again. It can be tiresome, yeah. I will agree with Roberta there, but not boring. You are far too intense for that. Well, thank God. I would sooner throw myself off a cliff than be labeled as bored. I think there can be no worse insult to pay someone than that. Then I trust you will never find a cause to end your life in such a messy manner, for I doubt it could ever happen. You radiate too much energy to bore. But you are difficult, almost impossibly so. Hey, I am aware of that. If you find me difficult, I most likely find myself 10 times more so than you do, for you do not have to live inside my head. And a good thing too. I fear it would not nearly be as orderly as I am accustomed to. Not by half. The two women giggled together for a small while, sharing slightly shy looks, both hiding their faces partially behind their hair. Just as Samantha was ashamed at the crumpled, tear-stained face she had shown Lillian those months ago, it seemed Lillian too was embarrassed at her own conduct, at the manner in which she had shouted so unreservedly at Samantha. They had each shown the other too much of themselves, and now it was too late to take it back. unlike poetry which could be refined until it's shown, like a polished gem. Human relationships were far more complex. It was impossible to do them over, erasing bits that did not work, substituting old words for new ones. You simply had to make do with what you already had, even if what you already had was in ruins. When I first met you, Samantha, I never did envision that the confident, animated young woman I had the pleasure of speaking to should turn out to be so wretched? Yeah, I suppose, if you wish to use such a harsh term. I was going to say particular, but your phrase also works. Why can I can't argue against it. I agree with you. Samantha sighed, resting her head atop of her knees. The gentle wind blew her hair about her face, but she paid it a little heed. I apologize if I deceived you, Lynn. I was not attempting to trick you, to appear to be somebody I'm not. The confident girl that you met 3 years ago, whom you had such lengthy, passionate discussions with, was still me. I am still her. We are one and the same. And yet, at the same time we are not. I've already grown too old, and I worry I can no longer manage such levels of enthusiasm. Sometimes to return to being that person, when struck with a certain amount of creative fervor, but maybe that is only a paid imitation. A shadow of myself, of what I once was, of what I can no longer be. You speak as though a part of you has died. Maybe it has. It sometimes feels that way. Samantha sniffed. It took her a few moments to realize that her lower lip was wobbling, her lashes trembling. I just have no idea what to do. Sometimes I feel so scared. Scared? Why are you scared? I'm scared that I have made you hate me. Samantha whispered it, her voice trembling as for confessing to witchcraft. I'm scared that by spending too much time in my company you have managed to prise open my outer layer, the smiling face I'm able to erect for the benefit of those I have yet to form a serious relationship with. And you have seen my more anxious, needy, troubled self. A self that you do not like. That is true. I have seen several things in you I don't like in you, Samantha, but that is simply what happens when you become close to others. You learn about them, both for better and for worse. No one person is perfect. Not even you? Lina paused, frowning. It took her a while to find an answer, for she still spoke as for her final revelation irritated her. Even I have my defects, I'm sure. Hehe, you said it like a potent child. Well, nobody wants to admit they have faults. I admit that I have faults all the time, really. And that self-effacing attitude is one of them. It does you a little good acting so despairing all the time. But I'm despairing! Despairing and dejected! But if you let people know it too frequently, they'll become despairing too. Do you think that is somewhat selfish? Then, you think it is best I keep my feelings to myself? No. These strong emotions are what poetry is for. Eh? Smartly spoken. Samantha smiled, but it was without any real conviction. Lillian's poetic theory, that strong emotions made for a strong poem, was all well and good, but Samantha had never been able to believe it. Not fully. Not that she had discussed it with Lillian. You know... Samantha frowned, shifting slightly to look up at Lillian. The older woman was frowning, as she often did, and coiling a strand of light blonde hair about one finger, something which she did not often do. Lillian was typically too reserved to frigid like that, especially not with her hair. That was more of a Samantha quirk. Lillian, are you alright? I'm fine. I was simply pondering. It must be on something important if it has led you to play with your hair like that. Indeed it is. Lillian sighed, unwinding the tightly knit spiral of hair from around her finger in a strangely defeated manner. I was wondering, if the Christmas report it has received thus far really upsets you that much then? I paused. I suppose I could update your earlier request if you believe it would make you feel better. Eh? Samantha blinked, hardly daring to believe. When she had broached that topic with Lillian a month or so ago, Lillian's response had been dismissive. "I do not exist to fight your petty battles for you. If it bothers you that much, write something yourself." But Samantha had been insistent, as she so often was. A defense of her poetry coming from her own pen would not work, would have no impact or meaning. It went without saying that a wounded artist would attempt to deflect the charges brought against their poetry. That was what people who had been critics did. If she attempted to defend her own work, it would only be open to more mockery. Of that, Samantha was sure. And so she had pestered Lillian, but not with any real hope that the other woman would give in. Lillian did not often change her mind once she had made it. As such, Samantha could hardly believe it. Would Lillian ever change her mind like that? And for Samantha's sake too? It seemed almost impossible.
Lillian, you would do that for me?
Yeah, if not for a peace of mind and mine. It may stop you constant whining at any rate.
Hey! I was not whining. I have been hurt, this is all. Any person would be upset if I had been abused in such an unfair manner.
So now you're saying it is unfair?
Yes! My poetry has a lot more worth than people give it credit for, than even I give credit for, especially as it was presented alongside yours. I do not want it to be scorned in such a manner.
Then, if it really matters that much to you, I will do it. When we republish our collaboration, I will write a defense for it, an explanation. Does that please you?
Wow! Lillian!
A small, shy smile rose to Samantha's lips. She quivered, hands clasped together, still unable to accept Lillian's sudden change of heart.
You care for me that much?
Lillian's face flushed light pink. Scowling, irritated at Samantha's ridiculously melodramatic levels of gratitude, or her own foolishness, it was difficult to tell. She turned her head away.
For some reason.
Against my better judgment.
Wow! Thank you, Lily!
However, because I care for you, I will have to offer you an ultimatum.
You are not going to ask for my soul, are you?
Of course not. What exactly do you take me for?
A talented and incredible poet who is also my dearest companion.
And some kind of hideous demon too.
Only on occasions when I have been particularly irritating.
I'm not sure if I found your comparison flattering, but... Lillian sighed, arms folded. If you wish for me to write a preface for the next publication of our collaboration, I will. However, I do not want you to share joint authorship with me. Not anymore. Samantha stumbled over this simple sound, this single syllable, like a pony with a broken leg. Her eyes were so white, they almost looked like planets set into her skin.
What do you mean, Lily? You mean you no longer wish to be associated with me?
No, that is not the case. If I did not wish to be associated with you, I would not continue seeing you.
Well then, for what reason do you wish to remove my credit from your collaboration?
Our collaboration. We worked on it together, did we not? In a sense, but... Another sigh. This ordeal has taught me something, Samantha. You are worse at handling criticism than you are at handling your liquor.
I'm not so bad when I'm drunk, am I?
I'm not going to dignify that with an answer.
How cruel!
You may regard it as cruelty, but I'm only doing this to be kind. Until you learn how to accept criticism without taking it as a great personal affront, I think it would best, not just for me, but for you too, if you made yourself less conspicuous to the public eye.
Your suggestion is to protect me?
Yeah. It is for your own good.
I do understand, but...
Having her name in print alongside Lillian's had been one of the key reasons why Samantha had proposed such a collaboration to begin with. She had asked Lillian because she had wanted to be with her, because she loved her. But now, No longer could Samantha call herself Lillian's equal, her much beloved partner. Rather, she had become what she had always feared she would be, and what she had tried so hard not to be. A burden. Somewhere inside her, Samantha felt something cold and sharp, an unpleasant twisting sensation. It was a sudden stabbing pain, and it made her wince, forcing the breath from her lungs. Why was it that the more you wanted to be with somebody, the more it had to hurt? Before Lillian had known Samantha, perhaps Samantha could have tricked her, fooled her into believing for the duration of their friendship that she really was a genius, elegant and refined, nursing a spring of creativity that would never dry. But that was not true. For people may someday come to regard Samantha as such, she knew she could never be this inhuman ideal, this perfect god. She was only a human being, and she was flawed, and more often than not, she was deeply unhappy. So it was not the person Lillian had hoped she would be, but that was no surprise. Samantha was not the person Samantha could hope she would be either. She was sick. She had been sick for a long time, and she felt sure she was growing sicker and sicker by the day. She did not want Lillian to remember her as a pestilence, a plague, a blight upon her idyllic rural life with Theodore. She wanted Lillian to revere her, just as she had done in the early days of their friendship, when neither knew much about other but both were desperate to discover, to explore, to sit for hours upon hours talking, smiling, laughing, their faces flushed with excitement. But that was no longer possible. Samantha had already ruined it. Lillian did not love her anymore. Lillian could not love her because they had grown too close. She had seen every one of Samantha's glaring flaws, gaping defects, and had deemed her unworthy of such heightened affections. Maybe Lillian had loved Samantha once, when Samantha was still an enigma to her, a blank, unknown canvas, but Samantha had dirtied that pure white, leaving not a single redeeming feature left. Yet Samantha had only grown to love Lillian more, all because they had become close. Her affection had not faded in the slightest. Rather, it had grown more and more verdant, blossoming into something so strange and unsettling and all-encompassing Samantha herself could not understand it. Their friendship had ruined their relationship. Now it was beginning to destroy Samantha too, digging into her chest, drawing blood in rivets, every single time Lillian so much as looked at her. But she had come too far now. Samantha could not stop loving Lillian. It was impossible. And the more Lillian grew to hate Samantha, the more Samantha loved her. She would love Lillian until she destroyed herself completely, until there was no Samantha left at all, not even a corpse. And Lillian would remain aloof and arch, coolly unaffected, completely unaware of just how much Samantha adored her, just how much she suffered for her. It was inevitable because there were no words for it. Samantha had no way of describing just how miserable she felt, and so she could not speak it. She could not write it. Instead, she could only hold those jumbled feelings within her heart until, slowly and painfully, without a sound, they choked the life out of her. Well, that was quite an interesting story. Not often I'm able to actually sit in the game for the whole game and stay with it for 2 hours. Okay, that thing was blocked earlier, I think. Notes. Hello everybody. If you're reading this, I imagine you have just completed this rather odd little visual novel. Yes, I did. I hope you enjoyed it. Haha. Yes, I did enjoy it. The style of this game is pretty different from anything I have tried before with this format, particularly the writing style. It's a lot more flowery than usual.
That's because since the story is set in England in the late 1790s, I want to try and evoke a more outdated, slightly antiquated feeling. I tried to use a more expensive vocabulary, the characters soliloquize for a little longer. There are lots of ohs and exclamations of deep emotion, more comfortable terming of others. A dear and beloved, there aren't even any references to spark songs, and the characters mostly use cannot and do not, as opposed to can don't. It is etc., which makes the overall tone more formal to a surprising degree. I had no idea it would make such a difference. Anyway, the characters. The most interesting part, hopefully. The characters are actually fictionalized versions of two real English poets. Except their real-life counterparts did not look quite so adorable. Samantha is based around Samuel Taylor Coleridge, the author of Rime of the Ancient Mariner, probably his most famous poem, and Lillian is based on William Wordsworth, author of The Prelude, and that poem about the daffodils that most people have probably heard of. Although I changed the genders of the characters, the timeline of the story is supposed to be the same, more or less, as it was in real life. So Wordsworth and Coleridge, Lillian and Samantha too, met in 1795, and when they were in their 20s, they became friends pretty quickly. Wordsworth moved to live near Coleridge. They spent a lot of time walking together in the soothing embrace of nature, because romantic poets love that nature, and they published a collection of poems together in 1798 called Lyrical Ballads, of which Coleridge contributed about 4 poems, and Wordsworth about 20. Ow. 5 times more. Nice. So clearly a joint effort. Lyrical Ballads was pretty revolutionary at the time, given it was written supposedly in the language of the common working man, as opposed to the more heightened poetic forms at the time. It isn't in heroic couplets, and a lot of the poems in the collection are about decidedly unpoetic subjects like poor people, or with the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, weird unexplained supernatural things with zombie sailors. Nice! I thought the relationship between the two poets, Wordsworth and Coleridge, was super intriguing. Even though they were close friends and had similar but not the same ideas about poetry, their personalities seemed somewhat different. For now, I'm going to conjecture, and from some letters essays I have read from the two of them, Wordsworth is more aloof and dignified, who sometimes gets the press down but just deals with it, and he did write The Prelude, which is a very long poem about how he became the most wonderfully sensitive, intelligent, thoughtful poet in the whole world, more or less, so I don't know if he had too many hang-ups in life. Or maybe he was just overcompensating. Coleridge, meanwhile, seems like more of a wreck. This becomes fairly evident when you read a poem like Dejection, an ode, where the title for this VN comes from, which is all about how he is really depressed. He will always be really depressed, and he will never stop being really depressed. Or the later Biographia Literaria, which is very rambling and self-effacing. Hence the characters of Lillian and Samantha. Lillian is a more compact person who looks vaguely annoyed by most things, whereas Samantha is a lot more troubled and prone to exclaiming a lot about how she feels, and mostly she feels terrible. I tried to write the characters fairly close to their real-life counterparts, which is hard given I obviously don't know how their real-life counterparts really were, but you can speculate, for they got some cute animisms to them as well. They giggle together a little, which isn't a phrase you apply to grown men. True. They also bicker together in a more childish way, and poke fun at one another sometimes. I designed Lillian with straight blonde hair because that style suits slightly aloof characters. It's very popular with princess-type characters who share a lot of her personality traits. And it's also popular with tsunderes. True. That's also true. Even though Lillian is old soon, has no dare and has no problem stating how she really feels about things. She wears blue because she's the cool, calm, measured one in comparison to Samantha. Samantha was designed to look more unkempt in comparison to Lillian. Her hair is out messier, her clothes aren't quite as fancy. She's also paler than Lillian, since she's more likely to stay at home, being depressed, than going outside. She's shorter than Lillian too. Coleridge was shorter than Wordsworth, it's accurate, and she has a more childish figure. Partially because she's also a couple of years younger, but I also wanted her look kind of delicate, I suppose.
It makes her a more sympathetic, pitiable character. She was designed with warmer colors than Lil, so she can be coded as the more fiery, passionate one. The other characters, meanwhile, don't have sprites. They are not important enough to the story, but they are all gender flips of real people. Roberta Sophie is Robert Sophie, another romantic poet from Coleridge was friends with, who also wrote Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Simon Fricker is Sarah Fricker, who was Coleridge's wife. He did not care for and treated her very badly. The other is Wordsworth's sister, Dorothy, whom he probably had a thing for. Ooh. And the critical review from Roberta that upset some so much in the story is an actual review for the real Robert Sophie, made of the rim of the ancient mariner, in the same exact words. I do wonder though, in a fantasy world where all the genders of historical figures are flipped, would the fictional characters have flipped genders too? Should Romeo and Juliet be Romea and Julius? Sure, why not? And if all the genders are flipped, does this mean women would occupy the space that men occupied in the 19th century of being the more important gender? So they would be living in a matriarchal society? Maybe. Possibly. Is that how Samantha gets to keep Coleridge as her last name even after getting married to Simon? Who knows? I guess I should be the author, but shh. It's not important to the story, since it focuses more on one relationship between two characters, rather than any kind of world building, but it's interesting to think about. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story and these notes. Maybe they are even eventually a good educational. Yeah, sure. I hope it can make people appreciate how cute, but also probably quite unbalanced and unhinged Coleridge was. If you want some first-hand experience of this, just go read chapter 13 of Biographia Literaria, and how aloof Wordsworth was. I'm kind of troubled that I made some already so wretched at this point in her life. Even if you follow Coleridge's own life, it will just get even worse. If you read this unwell, how bad is it going to be later on? Especially when she really does fall out with Lillian for real. She probably won't handle it very well. And I'd made myself ship those two together too much by writing this thing. And now I'm also dejected, because I know this pairing would have been impossible. What a tragedy. I always like pairs that can never actually be together. I think this might be a recurring theme in my VNs. Hahaha. But unrequited romances are always the best to write. There is a reason why the main couple only gets together at the end of romance stories, because the "do I like you, do you like me" part is the most interesting and dramatical of the whole storyline. The moment they really do get together, it loses the tension and it becomes more boring. So this way, it's more intriguing, right? Even though it is never going to work out. It's actually kind of depressing when I think about it, like that thought. Ebi-hime. Okay, that was Dejection and Oaths. And yeah, that way actually of going with the story is always very interesting, I must agree with that. Alrighty, so yeah, Dejection and Oaths. If you want to play it by yourself, check the link in the description, as always, because I'm leaving it there. And alright, so now I need to get that game that is the continuation of this. Well, not really, I don't know if it's continuation, I know only that the characters are the same there, so these two girls. I'm pretty sure the arts are a bit different there, like on a more advanced level a bit, but well, we'll see. Someday. Alright, for now, hope you enjoyed the whole series, and see you in the next game. Bye bye.